Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. This is the second demonstration of DIDlang, a new language for working with DID identifiers, DID documents, DID agents, and DID objects. So let's run the interpreter. So we can see we're running version 0.2, and it is loading a simulator for the did::color method. That did method simulator understands 142 different colors, and we'll see how that works in a moment. So the most obvious did that people are familiar with would be did example calling 1, 2, 3, 4. Here we see it being parsed, and at the bottom we see it verified false. It's verified false because this interpreter doesn't know about the example method name. If we did something slightly different, such as did color red, we would see that it does verify true. And what we're seeing here is the parse tree, the parsed results of analyzing whatever command is input. And as we get into more evolved commands, you'll see more changes taking place in the parse tree. There's a help system. So if you type in H or help, it'll show you the top level commands. So you have the option of just simply entering a did to verify it, and no redirection takes place. If you enter asterisk or star did, it'll return the did document associated with that identifier using a single level of indirection. Star did does double indirection. And if you think about that logically, what it's going to do is get the did document, and then from the did document, it's going to return a description of the default agent. That's one of the service endpoints in that did document. And then suppose you want to actually execute a method within that agent as described by the did document. Well, then you'd use triple indirection. And by default, there's a default service endpoint that's used, and there's a default method interface that's used, and a default method that's used at the appropriate levels of indirection. And you have the ability to override those, and they're described in the bottom part of the help page here. I'm going to go through some of the simpler examples, then we'll come back to how you do what we call coercion, the ability to override the selector for the agent service endpoint, as well as the agent interface and interface method. So let's look at some simpler examples. So if we go back to that previous example of did: color red, previously we just entered it without the asterisk and it simply did a verification. Here we're going to actually see that the did document's returned. And if we scroll up, you always get the parsed tree dumped out. We see that it verified true. And then we see the did document being displayed. And here we see in the did document, there's actually two service endpoints. Again, this is being generated out of the did::color method simulator. Let's go a little bit more. Let's go star did: color red. So here we're going to indirect through the did identifier to get the did document, and then we're going to indirect through the default service endpoint to get a description of the agent referenced by that service endpoint. So here we see it appear in blue. This is a description of the service endpoint. Of the agent. You see some of the interfaces that are defined by that agent. This is being returned as what we call a structured credential. That structured credential for the agent came out of the default, querying the default agent and asking for its signature, if you will. The format of what is returned here, describing the agent, is what's called a structured credential, which is a type of verifiable credential. The actual description of the interface's parameters could be using Swagger. Here, this is a little bit made up because it's part of the simulator. Um, in the trusted digital web, it'll use a language called Trinity Specification Language, which enables you to define objects that in turn can be used as parameters, that can be in turn used to define request response protocols, which in turn can be used to define agents in their entirety. So that's what we're seeing here. So if we go back up here, we saw that we had entered star star did colon color colon red. So two levels of indirection. We got the did document, then we got the description of the agent. Let's now execute a method on that agent. So here we're using triple indirection. Star 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 did colon color colon red. This is going to get the dig document like we saw. It's going to get a description of the agent, and it's going to invoke the default method on the default interface. In this case, it's going to return the actual object. So when we look here, we get another structured credential. If we scroll up a little bit here, we can see that it's giving us the properties for the red color object, and it's of type verifiable credential color as the subtype. And down here in the credential subject, we can see the ID is did colon color colon red, the same as the top level ID, which is what we'd expect. And then in the claims, we see that the name of the color, the formal name is red. And then the alpha, red, green, and blue integer values that describe the red color are here. And so if we were to go and do something different, like 1, 2, 3, did colon color colon green, we would see that we get the green color. And if we went a little bit different, I believe there's a dark green, we can see here's a dark green, so it's a slightly less saturated green. There's also some escapes because it can become tedious to be typing in all of these dids, especially as they become more complicated. So if you do bang H or exclamation H, you'll get some shortcuts. So here we can see that exclamation 0 does our classic D colon example, did colon example colon 1, 2, 3. Bang red gives you red. Bang 1, 2, 3 gives you single, double, and triple indirection through red. If you want to see like blue, you can just do bang blue. This is an interesting one. Colors, CLS, colors. That gives you a list of all the colors, i.e. all the colors that are on the simulated verifiable data registry that you can query. So let's go back to help. Here we get into the more complicated one, A, B, C, D, and D. I said previously when we looked at these simpler examples up here that it would always execute the default method on the default interface on the default agent ID of a default agent type. So for example, if we do bang 1 just to get the did document, we can see that there's two service endpoints. So the default type is this, the default ID is this. And so when we go to execute, for example, bang A, it's doing double indirection on an overridden or what we call coerced agent type and agent ID. So this is picking a different service endpoint other than the default. So when we go bang A and we scroll up to the top, let me just clear the screen and do bang A here. And then it's easy to scroll to the top. We can see now that the agent service endpoint has been coerced. It's been overwritten. And if we look down here for the agent service endpoint, we can see that it's agent type A and IDA instead of those previous defaults that we saw. If I do bang B, and I actually forgot what it is, CLS bang B, and scroll to the top. Bang B is doing double indirection. You count the number of asterisks. Um, and here we are overriding, again, the agent um, type and the agent ID. If we do bang C, bang C, we can see that we are doing 1, 2, 3. So we're 3 levels of indirection. We are actually going to get the object, the did color red object, but more correctly, what we're going to get the result of overriding the default interface. So here, this is the name of the interface on the default agent, and this is the method on that overridden interface. And so when we parse that, we give you all the information such as, um, the fact that either the service endpoint or the interface method was overridden, and then you can go down here to look and find out what those values are. If we do one last example, D, which is the most complicated, we scroll up to the top. This is doing triple indirection overriding both uh, the agent type, the agent service endpoint type, and service endpoint ID, and it's overriding the agent interface and the agent method. So you kind of have to read this from right to left. So star did will always give you the value um, of the did, will always give you the did document. The next star will always give you a description of the agent, either the default agent or you have the ability to coerce what the default agent is. And the third asterisk, reading again from right to left, allows you to override the agent method and the agent interface method um, that is to be executed on either the default agent or the overridden agent. So hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. Again, if you go to the help screen, you get a description of all of those options. If you do bang H, you'll get some shortcuts here that allow you to test things out a little more readily if you don't remember all the syntax. Anyway, I hope that's been a little more instructive, and I've chosen a font that's a little bit larger and easier to read. The Bluetooth Tools repository is now up on GitHub. Um, Shortly, I'll be posting this version 0.2. You'll find the previous version there for now. Take care and have a great day.